So, you've been scrolling the internet, watching tutorials, and you might have even gone so far as to add and remove the Sentro knitting machine from your Amazon cart multiple times. Because even after watching all these videos, reading reviews, and shopping around, you're still not sure if this is worth the purchase. I've had my Sentro knitting machine for 3 years now, and today I'm going to be sharing with you whether or not I think the purchase is still worth it in 2026. Hi, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Hunter and I'm a fiber artist. I've been crocheting and sewing pretty much all of my life, and I just started taking hand knitting seriously this year. I tried multiple times over the years to teach myself to knit, and it just never really stuck. But honestly, the Sentro machine did play a big part in helping me better understand the anatomy of knit fabric. With that being said, I've had my Sentro machine for 3 years now, and I can honestly say that I've maybe made like 2 complete projects fully finished, front to back, even weaving in the ends. All the other ones were abandoned projects, or they just got abandoned. That's pretty much it. I first got this knitting machine as a Christmas gift in 2023 from my dad and my stepmom, and at that time I wanted the machine so badly. I had seen so many videos of people just whipping up all these projects. They were making so many different kinds of things, not just hats, but pants, even shirts, dresses. I mean, they were really getting a lot done with this toy knitting machine, because that's what it is. It's intended to be a children's toy. And I was just amazed at how quickly they were able to whip up these projects, because as someone who started out with crocheting and then tried multiple times to knit, one of my biggest hangups was that knit seemed to take forever to work up. It doesn't feel that way now that I've been knitting for a while, but when I first tried to learn, multiple times that I tried to learn, it just seemed like so much slower than crocheting. But let me tell you something, all these people in these videos whipping up projects on their Sentro, they make it seem a lot easier than what it is. I don't think using the machine is necessarily difficult, but you don't always see the bad and the ugly behind the scenes, like dropping the stitches or, just mistakes happening on the machine and how to fix them. That doesn't always show up in people's vlogs or in their processes or whatever they put online. And all of these mistakes, all of these obstacles, all of these little hiccups that can happen when you're working on the Sentro machine can make the project take so much longer than if I just hand knit it from the start. Since learning to hand knit, I found that using traditional knitting needles, whether straight or circular, turns out to be faster, and you can do more things like increasing and decreasing. And maybe there is a way to do this on the machine and I just don't know about it, but all I know is what I know. Sorry, I almost forgot my water. I'm like, this is a yapping video. We need to have the water. So I guess if you're thinking about getting the machine, there's a few things that you need to think about. And one of them is, what do you plan on using this machine for? For example, I have a friend who uses a traditional professional grade knitting machine like this, and she runs her own business and sells her knitwear online, and they're beautiful, one-of-a-kind pieces, original designs that she makes. You might know her knit name, her business name is Bug Knit on Instagram. Yeah, that's right, that's my friend, and she's like basically famous in the fiber arts community. I feel like she's super talented. We met in college, and sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but Rowan, that's her name, if you don't know that, is such a sweetheart, and she's so amazingly talented. We've collaborated for photography projects before, so I just want to plug her really quick because she's really cool, and if you don't already know about her, you should go check her out. Anyway, she uses a professional knitting machine to make these sweaters. So she does hand knit, she does crochet also. Now, I don't really know the ins and outs of her creative process, but I would assume that because she makes so many of these sweaters and the types of designs that she does, it makes way more sense to use a machine than to be hand knitting all of these sweaters, because that would just take forever and a day, and already it takes a lot of time for her to complete these projects on a knitting machine. So I can only imagine how long it would take on knitting needles. If you're interested in these machines, they're heavy and they're expensive and they take up a lot of space. So this is kind of a big purchase, both financially and physically, that maybe starting out on the Sentro machine might be a good idea for you to just figure out if this is something you really are interested in before you make a big purchase like that. I think trying something that's a little bit more novice, like the Sentro or another circular knitting machine, would maybe be worth it for you. Whenever I used my Sentro, I did find myself thinking that I would be more interested in a professional traditional machine, because the Sentro was just not cutting it for me after a certain point. It just was not giving me all the tools that I needed to knit what I wanted to knit. Don't get me wrong, you can make a lot of stuff on the Sentro. There's plenty of videos out there, but I do think that if you're already interested in getting a knitting machine, that getting the Sentro would be good for you, and you're gonna make a couple of projects on it and be like, yeah, I'm ready. But even though I did kind of become a little bit more interested in those more professional machines, it's not something that's a priority for me right now. I don't even have space for it. My photography equipment takes up a lot of space in my apartment, and I'm just not trying to start a knit business in the way that my friend Rowan has one. I think that those are really cool and they're beautiful, but I've really learned in my journey as an artist of when to just kind of let things be for someone else, because as someone who's like a hobby maxer, as people are calling it, I of course have all of these different supplies for different crafts and stuff because I have interest in so many things. But for knitting, when it comes to knitting, I think I'll just stick to my knitting needles for now. What's cool about the Sentro machine is that although it is a circular machine, you can actually knit panels also, which gives you a lot of freedom in knitting other projects that you might not think of for a circular knitting machine. There are two settings, the tube and the panel setting. However, I do recommend just making your panels with the tube setting, because the panel setting limits I don't know, it doesn't let you go as far. It limits how many stitches you can do. But if you do it in the tube, you can manually cast on however many stitches possible on whatever size machine you get. And then I would go back and forth manually, and that's how I would make my own panels. So if you're interested in possibly getting a true knitting machine, maybe the Sentro is good for you. I think it keeps projects simple and kind of forces you to think outside the box on how to make a little bit more complex designs, and it does help you really understand the anatomy of knitting by watching those needles kind of pull the yarn in and then drop each stitch. So I don't know, just watching that really helped me understand knitting better. Another reason that you might be thinking about getting a Sentro is because you just can't get the hang of hand knitting. I've been there, queen. I did it myself. Like I said in the beginning, that was a huge reason of why I got the machine. I will say it is kind of rewarding to get your first project off of the machine, but it is nowhere near as rewarding as getting your first project off of your knitting needles, at least for me. Like I said, the machine really simplified knitting for me. As someone who was a crocheter first, I just couldn't understand the fronts and backs of stitches. It just looks different than how the anatomy of crochet is. That was difficult for me to understand at first, but I don't think that having a knitting machine is absolutely necessary to your understanding of knitting. It can help. I don't think it's necessary. Another sort of like, I guess, subcategory category reasoning under this is that you're wanting to knit faster. I think something I had to recognize, and maybe you do too, is that not everything needs to be done quickly. If you're into fiber arts, most likely you're also against fast fashion, or you maybe try to be a little bit more conscious of the things that you buy, a little bit more resourceful with the things you already have, and you know, are maybe an advocate for slow fashion. And slow fashion means that it's slow. Crazy. I know. So just be present in the process of knitting, of hand knitting. Don't get me wrong, I'm definitely someone who tries to knit as fast as I can, who tries to crochet and sew as quickly as I can, because I'm just so excited to see my idea come to life. So I do enjoy the process, but I'm like, oh my God, like I want to see it now. I want to see it now. I love my idea so much. I need to see it as an actual manifestation of my sketches or my ideas. I get that. But you have to slow down, and I do too. And actually, you know, this is such a weird metaphor, but I feel like maybe it will help solidify this idea for you, is that it's kind of like having a baby. I've never had a baby, so I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I'd imagine that if you are planning a pregnancy, that you'd be super excited about your baby, and you're probably thinking, oh my God, I'm so excited to meet this baby that I've been carrying for 5.5 months, and I want to see it right now. I want to see it right now. But you have to let that baby like marinate and grow for 9 months. And if it comes out early, usually there are some issues going on. So we don't want to rush things that we're making, is my point. Take your time. This is something that I've been working on my whole life, just being more patient, and I still am. I think that no matter how patient you are, there's probably more room to grow in that area of life. All that to say, I don't think it's a waste to get the Sentro knitting machine, but if you think it's gonna turn you into like a knitwear tycoon, think again, girlfriend. It's not gonna happen. Learn to enjoy knitting first. Moving on, now let me tell you why I will be getting rid of my Sentro knitting machine. I know. It just, she's gonna be getting rehomed. I don't know where to. So if after watching this you decide that you do want a Sentro knitting machine, you can DM me on Instagram if you're interested in buying my Sentro. She's in good condition, and if anything, I haven't even looked at her in like a year. So if any parts are missing, I'll lower the price and you can buy replacements online. They're really cheap. But yeah, let me just tell you why I'm gonna be rehoming my machine. It was cool. I learned a lot from it, but I do not enjoy it as much as hand knitting, which is so crazy to say that now when I was such an avid crocheter a couple years ago and could never imagine knitting because I had tried so many times and gotten so frustrated and just thought like it takes too long or whatever. Also, should I do a video on knit versus crochet? I feel like I should. Let me know in the comments if you think I should make that into a video. But anyway, getting back on track. I don't even remember the last time I made something on it. Like, I had started a series that I ironically abandoned, and the series was confronting my abandoned projects, but the series became an abandoned project. So anyway, in one of those videos I finally finished a sweater that I had started on the Sentro machine, and that was probably the last time that I used it. That was like the end of last year, so it's been a while. And while you can somewhat adjust the tension on the machine, you can't really change the gauge. Like, the hooks on there are the hooks that are on there. The way they're spaced out is the way that it's spaced out. So I noticed that all my projects were looking very similar to each other. They had the same texture. There just wasn't that much variety. So all of the variety in your projects heavily depends on color work and yarn texture, I guess. I don't know. That just started to get really boring for me personally. The next issue is drop stitches. I cannot tell you how many times I have dropped stitches on this flipping machine. I know everyone says in their tutorials to go slow, pay attention to the ends because that's where you get all the drop stitches. Well, I did pay attention, and I wouldn't see the drop stitches until all of a sudden I'm taking my project off and it's like, whoop. What the hell? Fixing those drop stitches, that is where, how I keep saying that the machine helped me learn a lot of the anatomy of knitting. Fixing all those drop stitches is where that came from, because you had to know how to do that, and also you only see the purl side of the fabric. So fixing drop stitches on the purl side is just way more annoying than doing on the knit side. The knit side, you can just kind of stick your crochet hook in there and like grab the yarn, grab the yarn, grab the yarn, grab the yarn. But then on the purl side, it's like, I don't know. Maybe it's not that complicated, but I felt like it was way more annoying. But it just was, I just was dropping stitches over and over and over again. And I think I can honestly say that I have dropped more stitches on the knitting machine than I ever have on knitting needles. And when you drop stitches on knitting needles, it's just not that big of a deal. I'm working on a raglan sweater right now, and I had dropped a stitch on the increase, and I was like, okay, well, I've never done that before, so I hope what I think is the way to fix it is the way to fix it. And honestly, I'm still not sure, but it seems to be fine. Whenever I dropped a stitch on the Sentro machine, it was just such a pain in the ass because, like I said, you're fixing it on the purl side, and when I would finally get my stitch back onto the hook, somehow that has caused 2 other sets of stitches to drop like halfway down my project. And I would just get so frustrated because to me, the whole point of the machine is to like make it faster and mitigate things. So by the time I've fixed all of this stuff, I could have just done it by hand. Again, this is just my experience. Maybe I was doing something wrong. I don't know. But I guess I have to remember, and you have to remember, that this was never intended to be an industrial grade machine. It is a children's toy. I'm not sure about other circular machines, ones that maybe are more professional. I can't speak to those. But as for the Sentro, it's, we're squeezing a lot out of this thing, okay? But because of these issues with the drop stitches and whatever, it's not something that I can do while doing anything else. I can't sit there with my Sentro and watch TV. I mean, I could, but I would kind of like get sucked into whatever I was watching, and then I look down and I've either knit too far across the machine or I have dropped stitches, and that's just not a good time. I am like a chronic multitasker, and maybe that's something that I need to work on with my attention span or something, that I can't like only work on one thing. I have to be listening to a podcast or watching a TV show or listening to an audiobook or, somehow getting some other thing done. Maybe there's something to be said about allowing myself to enjoy one thing at a time, but let's be real. Even if you did that, you still have other chores and stuff to get done. You can't just be sitting around knitting all day and not get other things done. So that is why I do prefer to hand knit, is that I can do that while I'm talking to my friends. I don't really have to look at what I'm doing whenever I knit by hand, unless I'm putting in an increase or doing something else. But stockinette stitch, I can just, and even doing ribbing, actually, I can do that without looking at my needles. But yeah, with the Sentro, you have to be looking at the machine or you are going to drop stitches. And that to me is pretty annoying. So yeah. I also found it difficult to keep track of my rows while using the machine. There is a counter built into the machine, but that only works for the circular tube setting and if you're making a tube, because every time that first stitch hook thing passes, it increases the stitch counter. So there are attachments that you can buy that are like magnetic. You put one onto the machine where the end of your row is or something like that, and then there's like magnets on the start and end, I think, because then every time that you turn for the row and that magnet hits the digital counter, it adds a row to it. So that's something that you could get. I never bought one of those. I know that there's all kinds of apps and stuff to help keep track of your rows. I would forget to tap the row counter. So these things don't work for everyone, okay? Like, you can try that out. It didn't really work for me because I would forget about it. So then it was also just hard to count my rows, because once the project reached a certain length, I'm trying to reach inside the center of the machine, pull up the end, inevitably pull too hard, and then yank a stitch off of the hook, and then have more dropped stitches. And then I'd be counting my rows on the purl side, which to me is confusing. And I'd get all the way up and it's like, well, you have some yarn that's inside of the hook and some that's around it, so you can't really tell what's... It's just too much. I couldn't do it. Maybe I'm making it harder than it actually is, but found it difficult to keep track of my rows, and I found it difficult to go back and then count my rows. And the final reason that I'll be rehoming my knitting machine is that it's not portable. I mean, it kind of is. It's more portable than, a professional knitting machine, but I can't just throw my Sentro into a tote bag and take it to a cafe or whatever and just sit there and knit. I mean, I guess I could, but that just kind of feels ridiculous to me. And I always have to have something in my hands. Like, the kiddos are all into the fidget toys these days, but this is my fidget toy. Knitting is my fidget toy. And I have to bring that with me everywhere, in the car, in the cafe, maybe not to the movies, but I just have to bring it. I have to be able to bring it. And I find it difficult to do that with a whole ass knitting machine. It's just too much. So finally, to sum it all up, it all comes down to why you want the Sentro machine and what your plans are. I think it could be a great idea if you want to get a feel for basic knitting machines before investing into a larger, more professional knitting machine, if that's something you want to get into. I also think that for hobbyists such as myself, it was cool to get to know the machine. I did learn a lot from it, but honestly, if you're not getting this to one day graduate from the Sentro to a more professional machine, or use it to crank out like 100 ear warmer headbands like I've seen people do. They like attach a drill to it and they're like, and it just goes so fast. If you're not trying to do that and take all these ear warmers to like a market or something, I don't think it's worth it. I know it's like so cheap in the grand scheme of like knitting machines. I think it's like $60 something, but girl, that's a tank of gas. That is a tank of gas, okay? And I mean, honestly, okay, jokes aside, it's not that expensive. Like, it's not gonna hopefully send you into debt or anything. So if you get it and you end up not using it that much, like I did or didn't do, you could always sell it like I plan to do. And it's not a huge deal, but no, I don't think that the Sentro is worth it in the end. Again, everyone's situation is different, but in general, I would not purchase it again. All right, everyone, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel. And don't be afraid to let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. Do you like your machine? Do you want a machine? Do you hate your machine? Please be sure to let me know down below. I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts on this, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!